Aloha and welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about risks. Risk is an important part of cybersecurity, and it's something that you'll be seeing on the certification exam. So let's take a look at risks. We start out with enterprise risk management, ERM, and that's basically the organization's formal approach to risk analysis. So ERM is going to include identifying risks, determining each risk's severity, and implementing risk management strategies. So risk, what exactly is risk? We hear risk a lot, but we don't know exactly what it means. Well, risk is the potential for loss, damage, destruction, or theft of assets or data. So risk occurs at the intersection of a vulnerability and a threat, and you will be asked about this. I remember specifically questions about this in the past. So keep in mind, a threat without a corresponding vulnerability does not pose a risk, nor does a vulnerability without a corresponding threat. So you need to have the vulnerability and you also have to have the threat that's going to exploit the vulnerability. Without that, you don't have risk. Risk is going to be the intersection of the two. And that's what you have to understand. So there's different risk categories. We have the risk identification process, which requires identifying the threats and vulnerabilities that exist in an operating environment. The risks are going to come from a wide variety of sources, maybe hackers all the way to hurricanes. We've got different risk categories like external risks. Those are risks outside your organization. That can be, hackers. That could be militia code. It could be hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, you name it. Then you've got the opposite, which is the internal risk, and that can be risks from inside. You can have malicious insiders that are, doing cyber espionage. You can have just screw ups. People, oops, I accidentally deleted a file, that kind of thing. So that's internal risk. Then you have the idea of multi-party risk, and that's risk that's going to impact more than one organization. You can think of it like let's say you're using a third-party soft thing like AWS, Amazon Web Services, and it goes down. That's going to affect not just you, but all the other people that are using that multi-tenant, um, you know, software or platform. So it's going to affect you and all the others. Or you can think of it like a city. When a city has a power outage, it's not affecting just you; it affects everybody in that area. So that's multi-party risk. Then you have legacy systems risk. We talk about this a lot in all kinds of sections. Risk is legacy risk is risk from outdated systems. Once the patches are gone, maybe the vendor's gone. You have these legacy system risks. You have intellectual property theft risks, and that's intellectual property. That's the things, your technology that you've created in-house. That's going to be, that's, you've got the risk of that being stolen. So when we talk about intellectual property, IP theft risks, we're referring to business analysis preparing for when and how to protect the intellectual value, intellectual property. So IP theft occurs when a company's trade secrets or other proprietary information is used to compromise the organization's business advantage. And then last in here, we have a software compliance or a licensing risk. That happens when you accidentally or maybe even intentionally run afoul of usage limitations. So let's say you've got 10 licenses for Microsoft 365, but you've got 12 people that are using it. That is a software compliance or licensing risk there, and that could have financial or legal consequences for your organization. Um, we also have quantitative and qualitative risk assessments. So we're going to start talking about risk assessments. That's the formalized approach to risk prioritization that allows organizations to conduct their reviews in a structured manner. So on the one hand, we've got quantitative risk assessments, and we're going to take a lot of different, uh, uh, I don't know if I guess, aspects. We can start with, let's say, the asset value, the AV, and that's going to be something expressed in dollars, and that's going to determine the cost that it takes to acquire an asset or to replace an asset. Maybe the depreciation cost, depending on your organization's way of doing things. But it's the asset value, so the value of something. We have likelihood. Likelihood is expressed as the number of times the risk is expected to happen in a year. We call that the ARO, the annualized rate of occurrence. So if you have something that's going to happen twice a year, it would be 2.0. it would be recorded as 2.0. If it's something that's only maybe one every 10 years, an ARO would be 0.1. So when we're talking about likelihood of an event, of a risk, we're talking about the annualized rate of occurrence, the ARO, and that's expressed as a fraction. Or well, it's expressed as a number like a 2.0 or a 0.1, something like that. You've got your exposure factor, your EF. That's expressed as the percentage of the asset expected to be damaged. So let's say that they break in and they, destroy half of something. That would be, 0.5, or actually it'd be like a 50 for 50%. So your exposure factor, it's a percentage anywhere from 0 to 100. Then you've got your single loss expectancy, the SLO, and that's the amount of financial damage expected each time the risk materializes, and that's going to be calculated by taking your asset value, the numerical figure that we came up with, the dollar amount, and it's going to be multiplied by the EF, which is the exposure factor. So we're going to take that $100 times 50%, and that's going to come up with $50. Then we have the annualized loss expectancy, and that's determining how much we're going to lose over a year. So we're going to have to take the number of times it occurs and multiply that by the value. So that's going to be, we're going to take the SLE, which is the single loss expectancy, the amount that you're going to lose in a single occurrence, and you multiply that by the ARO, which is the annualized rate of occurrence, the number of times it happens. So this is the quantitative way of analyzing risk, but we also have the qualitative risk assessment. In qualitative risk assessments, they substitute strict numerical analysis that we use in the quantitative with subjective judgments and categories. That allows for the assessment of risk that are difficult to quantify. Sometimes you can't say exactly how much it'll cost or how many times exactly you expect it to happen. So use these qualitative risk assessment techniques, and we'll have like a chart, and it'll show from like low to high, probability of happening, and low to high, consequences of it. So it's a little bit different, but qualitative techniques, they still use the same probability and magnitude factors to evaluate the severity of risk. They do so using subjective categories and not numerical values. So keep that in mind when you're taking the exam. So that's it for this section. Again, we start off talking about risk, the enterprise risk management, identifying your risk, determining the severity, implementing risk management strategies. We talked about the definition of what risk is. It's that intersection of your vulnerability with threats. You need both of those to actually have risk. And then we talk about external risks, internal risks, multi-party risks, legacy system risk, intellectual property theft risk, and software compliance licensing risks. And then we moved on and we talked about the different types of risk assessment, quantitative versus qualitative. Quantitative, you're dealing with hard numbers. You're talking about asset values, likelihood, AROs, exposure factors, EFs, single loss expectancy, SLE, and annualized loss expectancy, ALE. Go ahead and memorize those terms. On the other side of it, we've got the qualitative risk assessment. That's going to be using general terms. That's going to be talking about like high risk, low risk, things like that, where we can't exactly quantify with a numerical value. So that's it for this section. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Aloha.